rematch. Sony X90L full array local dimming versus the Hisense U8K Mini-LED. Up next.
I've seen things people wouldn't believe.
Hey, what's up guys? I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for watching. Today is a rematch of the Hisense U8K Mini-LED versus the Sony X90L full array local dimming LED. I actually matched these two up when the Sony X90L launched a few months ago. Why rematch them now? What has changed? Well, the price has changed for one thing. Sony X90L typically releases at a very high price point for being a mid-range LED in Sony's lineup. The rest of Sony's lineup is mini LED, the X93 and the X95 being the flagship. Z9K is a carryover. However, the U8K is the flagship in Hisense's lineup this year, except for the Hisense UX. Now, I actually compared the UX to the X95, which you can also see in the description below, but the U8K is the flagship. The challenge is it was actually much cheaper than the mid-range Sony X90L. Now, what happens every year for the Sony X90 series, there was the X90J, X90K, now the X90L. Again, they release expensive, and then by the end of the TV year, they become very sought after. Everyone wants to check them out, as well as the fact that there is a 98-inch version, as well as a 100-inch version of the U8K, which is very cheap at this time. They are all closer in price, which makes this matchup even more compelling for many of you looking to shop right now. So without further ado, here is the rematch of the Sony X90L versus the Hisense U8K. Thank you so much for watching. All right, guys, let's do it. Hisense U8K Mini-LED on the left, Sony X90L full array local dimming on the right. Both are 65 inches. This video will be a story of processing and local dimming algorithm on the Sony XR Clear versus the U8K, again, mini LED backlight, many zones, bright, punchy, saturated. Shadow detail being retained by the Sony is their signature versus the U8K with better blacks. Going through the different presets of each one, each preset is very important. We will not stay with just one or just with one that is accurate. The goal of this video is to show you how it looks in many different scenes and instances. About 95% of you will not have your TVs calibrated. So we will jump into accurate presets. We will match them as well as we possibly can. They are different manufacturers with different signatures. We will start with what I call standard matched. Standard is what both TVs ship in. Matched is where the Hisense can look its own way. I can't make the Hisense look like the Sony, but I can make the Sony look like the Hisense. What I mean by that is the Sony ships with local dimming on medium and live color at medium for standard. I max both of those to match the Hisense. I can't really make the Hisense look more like the Sony. That's what I mean by standard matched, is while they look very different, I will make them look as similarly as I can. The Hisense is a good deal brighter. At times that brightness is to its detriment. At times it helps it in regards to HDR impact. It's very colorful. Hisense has a more accurate look than something like a TCL. It's a signature that it has. Sony known for its accuracy. However, XR Clear upscaling technology has turned off some purists, as it does add a bit of sharpening to the image which cannot be disabled. I love it. I think it's a strength, and the X90L has become very popular as it's become an entry. Its entry to XR Clear is where the X90L sits in the lineup. The TVs are closer in price. They are only a few $100s apart. I do not put prices in these videos as they don't matter 4 or 5 months down the road. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't like blooming at all, neither one of these TVs are going to be able to dissuade you from OLED. If you're coming from an OLED, it is very hard to recommend a mini LED of any kind unless you are jumping up to a massive size like the 100-inch U8K or the 98-inch X90L. Pound for pound, OLEDs will beat them, being self-emissive every single time. However, we are perfectly centered in a dark room. This is the best they will both look, where blooming is minimal because I am dead center in the sweet spot. They both look very good. Keep in mind the price point. While I'll never belittle the price of anything, these are very affordable compared to the higher end TVs in the world right now. Now I'll have the presets that I'm using up at the top of the screen. Again, we are in standard matched. You can see there where there's a bit of a fade on the X90L. What you lose with blooming control on the X90L, you gain in shadow detail. You gain in detail and clarity, where the Hisense U8K may crush some blacks. You'll see here on the star field, there are more stars visible on the X90L, but blooming will become more of an issue. Now, the algorithm is amazing for the X90L, what Sony is able to do with a low zone count. However, it is not magic. There will be blooming. There will be off-angle fading of colors, actually on both of them. We are now in filmmaker mode versus custom. Custom being Sony's most accurate. Filmmaker, I am not a fan of on any display, let alone Hisense. I will show it as the purist watching will want to see it. A lot of these comparisons are done by many reviewers, and filmmaker alone, I think it's a disservice to the display, as it's capable of much, much more. Again, it all depends on what your preference is. Mine is somewhere in the middle. I like the theater preset, day and night, which is what SDR has, a day and night feature for Hisense. I like the theater preset the most on the Hisense. Custom is always a great preset on the Sony. It is now professional on the A95L. Though I would argue Sony has the best standard preset in the business. They work very hard on that out-of-the-box look for you guys. Moving into our very good friend Jennifer Gala. Special thank you to Jennifer Gala and her second channel, HDR Super Channel. Check the description below for all of her amazing work. I love this demo because of the aggressive aspect ratio. They both do very well here. Again, though, we are dead center. You'll see the X90L has slightly lifted black bars. At times you'll see that with the U8K, and it's not because there's not enough zones. Again, it's the algorithm. Is it intricate? At times with the Hisense, you will see random blooming, which shouldn't be there, but again, it's the algorithm. It's trying to figure out what the content wants. Even with XR Clear, the X90 will look more natural, the Hisense more aggressive, and have more punch. We will only stay in filmmaker for the rest of this demo. We will jump back into standard, vivid, theater day, theater night. Actually, we're not doing theater day, we'll just do theater HDR. We're mostly in HDR. Now, if black bars are something that you need as possible darkness with a possible black level for black bars, then the U8K would be your choice here. Any mini LED will perform better. Again, high zone count. I'm not showing you off-angle viewing as these are in my home theater and they are actually taking up the entire side. I can't even show you off-angle. However, if you're buying these, especially at very large sizes, it won't be hard to be in the sweet spot. They both look very good here. That said, you will need to be in the center of the screen. Now we're going to move into vivid. Scoff at this or Not many people want to see this preset and actually watch their TVs in this preset. I am not here to judge you. I am here to show you what they can do, how bright and punchy they can be. Now here, this is again, vivid matched, meaning whatever one TV is doing, the other will do to show how bright they can be. The only difference out of the box from these two is local dimming is on high. Live color is enabled on the Sony, and the temperature of both TVs has been brought to warm too, as they will show up cooler than in camera than they do in person. You will be shocked at how many people watch their displays in vivid or dynamic. Again, it's whatever you prefer. If you guys are watching this video live, my Premiere crew, part of our community and family, I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching these videos live. Thinking of all of you, and I so appreciate you guys watching as we are chatting and this video airs for the very first time. Please consider liking and subscribing if this is the first time you have seen me. Special thank you to Robert and Wendy Zahn of Value Electronics for supplying the X90L, which I've had since launch. Check the description below for all their information, and please consider making your next AV purchase through them. Vivid, dynamic. You can see even in that quick shot, what I love about this demo is the transitions become so quick. You'll see the local dimming on both. Even the best LEDs in the world struggle with this. And there's times where the Hisense absolutely crushes it, and there's times where it does lag behind. You can actually also get the U8K at Value Electronics starting this year, especially the 100-inch. You'll see there, both are fine, and it's also here how quick this transition is. It'll show up mostly right there. That's a very vast transition. All TVs or LEDs struggle with that. Hisense has had a killer year this year with the U7K, U6K, and U8K, as well as the UX, which is an absolute monster. We are now here in SDR. In SDR, we've matched theater night to cinema. Theater day mode is a lot brighter. Keep that in mind. Again, trying to match them up. I cannot make cinema mode brighter on the Sony. And theater night had a better look to it simply because I'm in a very dark room. Now, if I wanted the Hisense to be brighter in every single scene, I can easily do that, but again, it doesn't really benefit it at all. If anything, it'll clip and look worse. So you're trying to find that balance of making them both look as similarly as possible while keeping them in their presets that give them their signature. Sometimes having both TVs calibrated exactly the same only makes them look exactly the same. I like leaving a lot of the processing enabled due to that preset. If that preset calls for it, I leave it. Something like cinema and theater, the processing is minimal. Filmmaker, the processing is disabled. Standard, there's more processing. Vivid, all processing. What do you guys think of this matchup? The reason I also rematched them is both TVs are now more affordable. They both have much larger sizes. Now here I'm going to turn down the exposure to see that even the U8K loses some detail. It's still overly brightened, even with the exposure down. You'll see much more detail on the Sony in the glass. You see where the brightness actually hurts the image. Now bringing the exposure back to where it's normal, you can see the haloing on both, a little bit more on the Sony. But I thought I'd show you the exposure down. That way you can see that even with the exposure down, the Hisense still tends to over brighten, which is something you may prefer. Looking at Jen's amazing content here, we are back in match standard. Some of these demos are so amazing. You have to have them in a punchy preset just to to marvel at them and see how they show up on camera. Again, the edge would go to Hisense for HDR impact. Now the X90L is the mid-range. There is the higher end X93 and the flagship X95. The UX is the true flagship, but it's more of a prototype of things to come. I matched the UX against the X95, and it really held its own, if not beat the X95 in many ways. I love this here as it's a very bright image, mostly white. I would give the depth to the Sony, but the overall brightness of the U8K just looks good, if that's, again, something you prefer. Very challenging demo here. More shadow detail on the X90L again, but blooming would become an issue. We're not really looking at skin tones here, as that's not the natural skin tone. Obviously, she's wearing makeup. But there's more detail in her face, more granular detail. Though I imagine the U8K has a higher contrast ratio, it's the details that would live within the Sony. That's XR clear. Now, I'm not going to show you copywritten material. Even pausing it wouldn't help, as XR Clear will disable if the TV is paused, so that wouldn't do any good anyway. But Sony would have the advantage over the Hisense and any TV this year for that matter. Sony has pulled ahead in regards to its XR Clear processing and upscaling. So YouTube TV, low bitrate content. Sony has the edge over everyone, not just Hisense. Very excited to see what Hisense does in 2024. Again, TVs were stellar this year. The UX, phenomenal, very bright, amazing local dimming. But again, more of a prototype. If you have that TV, enjoy it. But I see the rest of the lineup going that way in 2024 at CES, and you'll see us interview Hisense, and you'll see their TVs from CES in just a few months. Now, I have both the U7K and the U8K. I enjoy them both. Now, we are here in theater and cinema. That would mean if you see me in theater, not day or night, that means we are in HDR. Very beautiful, both of them, very colorful, very vibrant. Now, for me, mini LED and LEDs have a hard time surviving against any kind of OLED, let alone a QD-OLED or a micro-lens array OLED. Where LEDs will survive and thrive is at value and at giant sizes above 83 inches. That's where they will survive and thrive. I'll also take you through the presets again, as I did in the beginning of the video, with both SDR and HDR. Again, to show you without matching the presets in terms of how they will look differently going through the presets, whether it's IMAX enhanced, theater, cinema, sports. There are presets on the Hisense that the Sony doesn't have, and vice versa. Now there you'll see that even though the algorithm should be better and there's more zones on the Hisense around the bug, things were a bit faded. Now we'll go through the presets here. This is also part of the demo. There's one that's SDR. That's the one I'll show you now. So going through the presets in SDR, which you'll also see a theater day and a theater night. Just flicking through them to show you how they match up and don't match up. Now, if I was to do this entire comparison in filmmaker versus cinema, the Sony would blow away the Hisense, as cinema is, or I should say filmmaker is not the Hisense strength. Actually, Hisense Eco mode to me looks better than its filmmaker mode. Now, where are you guys with mini LEDs? Do you still consider it? Is burn-in still a fear for you? I am a mini LED fan at heart, but for my own personal preference and what I watch on a daily basis, it's very hard to go away from OLED and micro contrast. Which is why XR Clear on the X90L does give you more granular detail. Now, with Jen's demo here with pizza, which I gave up, by the way, this is very fascinating. We are in HDR here. Now, going through the presets, you can never get the Hisense to look quite like the Sony, meaning you can't ever really make the Hisense look like a real piece of pizza as you see on the right for the Sony. I can make the Sony look more like the Hisense, but can't make the Hisense look more like the Sony. Meaning even in filmmaker mode, it can't get that more realistic look. Which is okay. It all depends on what their preference is. The TCL would be a stronger version of this. It kind of does illustrate the two companies' signature where they both have some similarities, TCL and Hisense. But TCL also brute forces that even stronger, which I like as a matter of fact. But I thought I'd show here that, again, the shadow detail, what it's trying to identify in the pizza is more accurate and more real. Again, if that's important to you, it's important to you. Now, I love this demo in one of Jen's videos. You have to go through her content, which is phenomenal, but she has so many clips that are in the middle of other videos that aren't with the theme. And this is fire dancers, and it is incredible to see. And what's amazing is even with these very quick transitions, both the X90L and the U8K handle them amazingly. And I feel probably, or am guessing, it's because of the brightness of the flames. They don't have much trailing at all. The U8K is better here, but the shadow detail again in the backgrounds is visible more in that last scene on the Sony. Again, so you have to pick, and all these TVs, guys, even OLEDs, you have to pick what signature you prefer. For me, the higher zone count, even some of the crushing of the shadow detail is something I prefer over blooming, simply because I'm basically allergic to blooming. Once I see it, I can't unsee it. There's more detail in the back of the Sony. These panning shots are amazing. Again, this is Jennifer Gala and the HDR Super Channel, but we are in theater and cinema. Now we're back in HDR. Now, I mentioned before about not showing copywritten material simply because I won't risk my channel, but you'll have to take my word for it that the upscaling on Sony is better. But you can get a feel for how these two look, even without a reference monitor. I want them to look different. I don't want them to look exactly the same, but they have to look comparable. Now you'll see the X90L one more time. You'll see it go against my A80L. So you'll see 65 versus 83, but I still want to show you the comparison. I have these TVs. They don't go anywhere, so it's worth showing you. Especially so many of you are interested in these models at the end of the year. That way you have a current video to look at as well as my review and my other comparisons of both the X90 and the U8K. You can see the U8K go against the U7K on my channel in gaming and in regular content, the X90L going against the U7K and U8K. Now this last part I'm going to put in game mode simply because time did not allow me to use my PC, which was hidden in the back. So I have it in game mode, which everything is disabled. This is how these game modes look, and I figured using Jennifer's kind of anime demo material, I'd give you the same point. Both have decent looking game modes, however they are mini LEDs. Game modes, things are disabled. LEDs, that becomes evident. They do look a little bland in comparison to OLED game modes. That's on any mini LED on the planet. In order to reduce input lag and latency, a lot of the different processing you may enjoy is disabled. All right, guys, I am Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for watching. Those of you watching live, I love you guys, and I appreciate your friendship so very much. What do you think of these two TVs? Are you considering them now, even at larger sizes that they've fallen in price? 98 inches on the X90L and 100 inches on a U8K. I think they're both fantastic and very comparable. All right, guys, I'm Brian at Brian's Tech Therapy. Have a great day. Love you guys. Take care.
It's better to burn out